you played with Rick Wakeman, right?
Hmm.
And I listened to some of that the other night, and I mean, like, I hate this kind of like to say that somebody is a rock guitarist, but if there's one, it's you for me.
That was, yeah. I mean, yeah. Thank you. I do other things as well, but primarily my heart is in, heavy blues, and I mean, it's a funny story because I grew up. First gig ever. I left school at 16, and I played with Leo Sayer. He became very big here, but the one of the fantastic things about doing it, my friend Gordon Barton, who was the drummer, he woke me up. I was just so a day before my 16th birthday, and I'd been to France with a friend on a binge. It was Easter break, very an intense binge. And I was laying in bed, and our house had a back door policy, meaning the back door was always open. So Gordon was a dear friend. So he woke me up in the afternoon, and he said, "Ant, you're leaving school tomorrow, and you're coming down to Brighton to play with Leo Sayer, right?" And I went, "Oh, okay." I had to call my mum. She was working on a movie in Ireland, and overnight she said, "Go, go fly," was her. She'd always, anything with my music or artistic career, it was already go fly. So bless her. She passed away last year, by the way, but 95. So and she passed away in her sleep. But anyway, but back to so and the reason what was so good about that is because Leo Sayer and his writing partner Dave Courtney wrote Roger Daltrey's first solo album, which had just come out. So I knew it was a good as well. I mean, I would have done it anyway, but it was like I was living the dream at 16. Anyway, so and then how do I get to Rick Wakeman?
No, so at 16, you were already kind of like known for being a great guitarist.
I was well, I wasn't known because I mean,
I mean, some people,
yeah,
some people.
but I was recognized. Yes, I mean, Adam Faith was our manager, and he actually. I mean, the band lasted 3 months because they were all alcoholics. Serious, well, not alcoholics, but one was actually, bless him. But it was, we were the out to lunch bunch. I mean, I was 16, so I was, I mean, I wasn't an alcoholic. I was, you know, I was experimenting with, medicinal off not off the counter,
Mhm.
all the usual and more. But anyway, so but after that, they kept me on, and actually they wanted to make me a solo artist. So and but fortunately on our last night's gig ever, the band had heard that a friend came around and said they were looking for other bands. So, it was mayhem, and I was the only one who was in, sober condition. Anyway, but that night, Adam Faith had a terrible car crash which nearly killed him. He was in hospital for 3 months. And there was no airbags then, so the steering wheel, I mean, absolutely terrible. But anyway, so and I got bored. I mean, I was 16. What did I know? All I knew was playing guitar. And Dave Courtney was a dear, dear friend who was, he was co-managing with Adam Faith, and we hang out a lot. But eventually, I missed my friends in Harrow, so I moved back to Harrow. They still kept me on, wages and stuff. And anyway, uh, 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 and I mean, I'm starting from the beginning, even though you mentioned Rick Wakeman.
No, but let's start even earlier. So how did you get
Yeah.
to play guitar?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I'll start. Okay. Thank you. Well, I started having piano lessons when I was 5. All right. And by the time I got to 10, my brother had we'd had like Beatles plastic guitars and nylon strings, and things, but nothing serious, right? And but then at the age of 10, my brother, who's 2 years older than me, had a exchange, that they do, a family of who musicians basically came, and Mark was assigned to be their buddy, sort of, the contemporary buddy. Anyway, Eric, oh God, I forgot his name. It'll come to me, but Eric was his name. Really cool guy. He played guitar. And so I remember, I think I probably had the Play in a Day book, which is Bert Whedon, who I got to meet yet later on, and another story there. And so we got the Monkees book of songs, and I was a the Beatles fan, obviously, and well, the Stones came later, but Beatles definitely. Herman's Hermit, Stevie Wonder. Oh, no, actually, I was a bit annoyed with Stevie Wonder because he did "Weekend Work It Out" and he shifted the chorus, but it's so cool now. I mean, it's a genius. But at the time, I was annoyed because he was blaspheming. But I mean, but now, I mean, some years later, I thought, wow, what an amazing turn on it, because he's actually singing, on the offbeat. We can work it out. Whereas there's "they can work it out." That's the beat, right?
Yes.
So I was a little bit annoyed. But and then so the Monkees book, and that was the first. And he used to sit with me. I used to sit with him rather, and he just play, and I'd assimilate from him. He was so, you know, and so he was. So I started really playing seriously at 10, but because of my um I would say divine moment when I was about 3, crawling through an attic conversion, and all those boxes and clothes, and it was like, foraging through, and suddenly what was this beautiful acoustic guitar from laying with the neck away from me. So all I saw was this beautiful, bass of the acoustic, and it had beautiful mother of pearl inlay. So it was like, oh, because it was shining, and it was like the Ark of the Covenant. And, it's like, and I didn't know even what it was at first, but I knew it was important.
Mhm.
I had an instant recognition, even at the age of 3 or something, that this was like really important. And so, and then, so back to 10 and Eric, right? So I said to myself, I don't deserve to play a solo note until I've 2 years of actually learning chords. I don't know where that came from, but that was just something to do with my respect for the fact that it was a divine moment I had, and it was like I wanted to honor that. But anyway, so 2 years, and I've heard lots of stories from other guitar players who've had a similar experience. So I'm not, unique in that one, but it's not everyone experience. So I was blessed, and so I felt blessed rather. And so I remember the first 3 notes I played after 2 years, and it was like, something. Well, I say, remember, something like this. That was that. Really, that was it. I was my main sorry, put it back. There you go, baby. Right. um, my, at that point, my main influences had been Rory Gallagher, Paul Kossoff, Eric Clapton on Blues Breakers, definitely, absolutely. Peter Green, and finally Mick Taylor. When he joined us. Well, actually, I knew of him when he did that Blues from Laurel Canyon album prior to joining the Stones, and he was for me at the time. It felt like he had the best vibrato ever. It was a hybrid of Paul Kossoff, but not quite so. I mean, Paul Kossoff was my first love. um, so yeah, I mean, yeah. So I then, so I was like 12 by then, and because I'd been playing, I was very comfortable. I noticed that I had every 3 months I'd have another breakthrough. Like I'd be playing and playing, and suddenly something else would click. So it was a 3 monthly cycle of growth. I'd be playing every day. I used to play by the side of the bed before I went to sleep, and I'd actually fall asleep playing. It's like it was that it was that intimate.
Mhm.
Um, I had a very wonderful and also slightly abusive childhood. Like I was abused a few times. So and so this was something that I could trust
Yeah.
as long as I gave my my whole self, and then like what I gave, I got back, and it was very intimate, and it's anyway. So that was, and then I did a few. The first gig I ever did, actually, it was a very boomy community center, and I got on stage and I realized I couldn't play all these notes like I was practicing. It was a life lesson. Like what translated, especially in a boomy old college, was like very clear, defined notes, and a single note would have more impact than a lot of widdly diddly, which I sort of do now. So, but I have to keep reminding myself, less is more. But um, but I've been accused of widdly diddling. So Jeff Whitehorn, for one, we did some stuff with Marshall together, right, at one point, and we were friends. I mean, but he was like, he started getting a little bit, I mean, he was high spirited, I would say. And so at one point after a gig, we were all in this hotel, having some, you know, uh, drinks and stuff. And he said, he asked me, "And why do you play so many notes?" I said, "Because I can." Because but I remember that, and then it was a trade fair, and I was performing, in front of in a big room, and he was calling out too many notes, So he had this sort of jeering thing, but I love him because it's I respect him. He's been but he was I mean I don't mean this in a bad way, but he wasn't a wild guitar player. He's a very, very good. He's done amazing things. So I'm not, and he's always got a good sound, and he's just. I mean, I don't want to just say reliable because he's more than that. He's a good, really good player,
Yeah.
but he's not like me. I take big risks.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm just that personality. and but I have been told. I mean, we did this with back to Rick, right? We did this a live show that was televised in the Kremlin, actually in the Kremlin, which is sacred, right? And I can remember there was two people like halfway holding lighters up, and the security ran to us. No, 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 no. It's just, but we were luckily to, I mean, Rick obviously had the power and the relevance to be invited to actually play in the Kremlin. It's like anyway, it was televised, and the director afterwards came up to me and said, "Yeah, I couldn't take my eyes off you." So as a performer, I was very, I mean, I'm humble, and what a great. I mean, of course, it could have led to some. Um, uh, I can't really say, but for my personal thing, anyway, I've been very lucky to. It's all I do, It's all, has been very much my to perform and do the work to be able to play. It's not just all. It's both. And I also noticed with probably the same with other musicians. You know, too much live shows. I want to get back in the studio. And
Mm.
if I haven't been in the studio for too long, I need to go out again. So it's a really lovely balance if you get it right, because one inspires the other. You know, if you play the live things, you go in the studio and you bring that energy with you.
So
Um,
did you, you said that those first 5, 6 years you were practicing and playing so much. Did you keep that up throughout your career?
yeah, I mean, we know what, not as intensely. I must admit, you know, I mean, but it, you know, but because I was playing so much, it was naturally, you know, I was writing, so I was actually playing as much, actually more intensely, rehearsing rather than sitting on the side of the bed. But I remember, you know, I played with Roger Chapman for a while, and the nicest thing was being in a hotel room on my own, no you know, no distractions in the afternoon before the show, and I'd just be playing on the bed, and that's where it was I did that same thing, playing on the bed, no amp, just, you know, and being connected. And I can remember also, let me just go back because I,
Yeah.
you know, I'm rambling a little bit. So after Leo Sayer, um, um, about, well, then I took a job in a nightclub to, you know, see if I could. Well, no, the idea was to pay my dues, you know, learn all these standards and stuff and whatever. So that was cool for a couple of years, and then Jim Avery, the bass player who, you know, for Leo Sayer. By the way, he was sent down by Track Records to figure out, if Roger Daltrey, you know, there was a threat that he might leave the Who. He was sent down as a spy. Great bass player as well, you know. So all this like intrigue, and sadly, you know, Jim passed away last year too. You know, very sad. Um, but he, you know, he was a major mentor for me as well,
Mhm.
just as a person, and taught me a little bit about life that I had, you know, I had no idea. All I really knew was playing guitar, you know. And as I said, so that was, and then he called me and said, Ant, you know, we've got a record. It was the punk time, 1997, 1979, sorry, punk time, and so he, you know, said, Ant, we've got a deal. We just need to put a band together. So, okay. So I was, you know, and I was doing this nightclub. So, you know, my hair was long and everything. I thought, okay. So, you know, I just not shaved my hair bald, but it was like very short, colored it in different colors and got drunk one night. And, you know, I had my eyebrows. I didn't know, it wasn't the intention. And one eyebrow was yellow and one was green. I remember that very much, and also managed to crash a Mini in the Mini, you know, Cooper Mini, in the process. Crazy night, but then I woke up and like, oh my god, I'm like a peacock. So anyway, but that was towards the end of the band. But anyway, so we you know, we got Gordon, who's the guy who woke me up from, you know, you going. So he was our drummer, and then John Fenton was our manager. He managed, Arthur Brown, you know, fire. But then he gave the management rights away for a phone bill because he did, you know, really crazy time. He had a beautiful apartment in Kensington. Yeah, it was Knightsbridge actually. Yeah, it was a beautiful place. That was our hangout. I met Sid Vicious there. Well, actually, I've met him before, but he came along, yeah. And, you know, by that time, he was being Sid Vicious, like grabbing chicken, you know, legs off the buffet. You know, he was in his role by then. But just back to that, we were rehearsing the punk band, and he was actually playing drums at the time with Susie and the Banshees. They were just rehearsing. You know, I don't think that people knew about them at that point because it was all early stages. But uh, uh, Jim, Gordon, and myself were sitting in the bar, and this, very quiet spoken, bit insecure Sid Vicious turned up, and he's introduced himself. And he said, "I'm Sid Vicious," but without like arrogance. It was just, and I instantly like resonated with him. Thought, what a, someone I'd like to talk. But unfortunately, Jim and Gordon were drunk and they're a bit more arrogant.
Uh,
And they told him to, where to go. And it's like, oh, that's happened to me a few times. And in my life, I've been interested in talking to someone, and whoever's trying to protect me or not
mhm.
is sort of. So I've got lots of people I want to. Well, it's too late, but in the next life, I want to, make amends.
Yes.
but so anyway, we had like in true punk fashion, we had 3 record deals. We got thrown off the 999 tour halfway through because we caused a riot in Middlesbrough, and of course, every people are labeled, and everybody knew about it before we even got back. So and so eventually, uh, it sort of fell apart. I can't remember really what was the defining moment, but dur- during that time, I met Keith Moon. Actually, very shortly after he passed away, I actually died on my when I married my first wife, and I was with John Fields, who was the Who's accountant, dear friend as well, because we were with Kit Lambert as our producer, so we were in the Who family, and so we were sharing a cab uh, down to Gatwick Airport with John Fields, and it came on the radio, Keith. So I mean,
Wow.
John was devastated. Obviously, I was shocked because I'd met him. In fact, when I met him, it was the Water Rat pub in Chelsea, where it was a very um, known, place to hang out, and I lived just up the road. And so saw Keith, and I walked up to him and said, "Oh, hi, Keith. I'm working with Kit." So he says, "Oh, so he was really, 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 really friendly and lovely, warm, and he invited me into his roller and
Mhm.
to hear his. He said, I've got, come to my car. I've just got a new quadraphonic, system." So he was on the seat, with the little window open, and I was in the back seat enjoying a brandy and with him, and hearing the Beach Boys, ba 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 ba. That was one of his favorite songs, right? In this well documented. So I had the pleasure, and I remember this girl. She was Afghan coat, John Lennon glasses, hair, and she sort of recognised Keith, and she's, "I was at Woodstock," and he was really lovely and gracious, I mean, he was, and there was no, he was just in a really, really good space. Um, there was no, like, because he had Jekyll and Hyde, but he was definitely in the Dr. Jekyll mode. Really lovely, warm, just friendly, like I am. I just felt there was a similarity in you know someone who you meet, and you sometimes just you just invite them into your time, life, or at least a moment.
Yes.
And it was so special. And then within must have been a few months, I can't remember, it was probably that same year. And my first wife, you know I was already with her. So
Mhm.
anyway, she
And
was known as Matt.
you were just 20 years old at that time, right? 77,
Uh,
78.
yeah, 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 yeah. Actually, 21.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, I mean, I just think about the the real the sense of like if if it hadn't been that time, I would have never got to meet him and just share a moment with real funny, just a little Woodstock thing coming in, and just beautiful little bubble. And sadly, he left us. Um, and so anyway, that was that. And then
I mean, it's amazing how early, like for me, these kinds of experiences that you're talking about, they happened very late in life for me. I was 38 when I started going out as a musician properly.
right.
You
Hmm.
know, and it's kind of like incredible for me to imagine that, like, as a teenager you were sort of
Yeah.
having all those experiences already. And I mean, that's also why, like, when I listened to your playing, and you were very young and you had such an old voice in a way.
Yeah,
Good
I
way, in a
guess
good way, in a good way,
yeah,
yeah.
no, and I hear you. I hear you. Thank you. I mean, I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I was definitely, had a gift which I put the hours in.
Mhm.
Definitely, I had to put the hours in, but I don't know where it came from, and I do know really because it was, from the universe, God, whatever we would call it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've come to think of God as the universe, and I believe there's also like some sort of committee, and I'll get onto that later. I'll tell you why. Yeah, and so anyway, so there we are. So I'm the punk band and meeting Keith. Also had Charlie Cray, who came to the pub especially, and he had his suitcase and he wanted to be my agent. Now, I don't know if you know about the craze, but well, Ronnie and Reggie were the biggest East End gangsters, brutal, very dangerous people, and his older brother, he wasn't really part of it, but he, by association, he was the older brother. So when he wanted, offered me to manage me, and I mean, I was, I mean, I wasn't I just politely declined. I mean, and I mean, I mean, because I knew it was not the right thing to do. But he was very nice and very polite, and a gold pen, and his writing was like a spider. No, because he's from the East End. I mean, but yeah, but it was. I remember that being sort of, and I just there was no ramifications. He didn't, give any. Or, he just very politely then just went away from my life. I never saw him again. So I mean, that could have turned out different.
Yeah.
Knowing,
But it's to me, it's fascinating that there were actually people out there that sort of recognized your talent and then made that kind of offer. I think that's what this story, ultimately is about.
yeah, and I sort of I didn't even think of it. And the funny thing was also, I was, because it was our local pub, and I wasn't very social, not because I didn't want to be, I was just shy, right? But because of that, everyone thought I was dead serious, because you don't say anything and people get uneasy, right? It's like now I've opened up quite a lot, and everyone knows my insecurities come out in my gestures and everything personal, but back then I was very focused, and socially, so like meeting someone like Keith, it was instant because I felt safe with him. He was really nice and warm, so that I felt, yeah, very comfortable just hanging with him. It was fantastic. I mean, one of my precious memories. So anyway, so there we are, and Kit Lambert too. He was just a magic person too. Very eccentric, but brilliant.
What just occurred to me is that I spoke with Larry Fast, which was my last podcast. And Larry Fast was met Rick Wakeman in the early 70s and built a synth for Rick. So now I see like there's even like
Oh,
connection between you two guys here. So
oh, right, yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay, okay. I met a guy who also had one of those, what do they call it, in the early days of it wasn't a keyboard synth. It was like had little pegs you put in it, and I
yeah, the
can't remember what it.
modular synth. Yeah, the modular.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, and I think Rick, he was had a connection with Rick as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
but really funny with Rick. We'll go back to Rick now, and I can back up for the
Yeah,
next
we
thing.
we can jump back and forth. That's fine.
Yeah, well, with Rick, it's funny because um, I, I'd seen him around. You know, I was driving at that time. I had a really beautiful silver Daimler, Jag, but it was a Daimler. You know, they Jag sent it to Daimler to put their version on it. And I used to see Rick around town in his Rolls Royce, and I, obviously recognizing. Oh, and by the way, I've got to say about Rick, I was a big Yes fan, and when Rick, left and did his Six Wives of Henry VIII, because I was also a piano player, so I used to go into the stores, uh, a big store in the West End, music store, and get on a Moog and just, play Rick Wakeman Star. I just loved it. I was, and those tracks I became emotionally attached through my keyboard side, right?
Yes.
Not guitar, but that was my other. I remember that, and so when I was doing a show called Rent in just well, it's a very tragic time for me actually, but we'll get onto that later. And I'd lost my daughter through a hospital mess up,
Mhm.
you know, which the universe changed. So and I was just getting through that, and then I got offered to do this show Rent, which actually gave me a Groundhog Day. And it was very emotional. It was about a young girl dying.
Oh,
Amazing show, and I had this beautiful position of being the guitarist who was facing the audience on stage. We had a little shack, and it was just great set, scene, and the cast was so lovely, and music, and yeah, it was just, it allowed me to grieve without having to move on because it was the same show every day. So it was a really cathartic and um, time for me,
yes.
to be able to do that and have so much, empathy going on around. It was just beautiful. So anyway,
So just to put that on the timeline,
oh,
that was the early
oh, I'm
90s.
sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe we'll have to edit it.
No, that's fine. I'm
It's all, with Rick though, Adam Wakeman, his son, came into depth on, yeah, and I was facing him every night. So we became dear friends, and then he invited me to come. After the show, he said, "Ant, I'm putting a band together for Dad. Do you want to come down?" And I said, "Yeah." So as soon as Rick and I met, it was instant recognition, happy, and I had the best time of my life with him. It was so beautiful. When we started rehearsing some of the songs from Henry VIII, I hadn't listened to it, and suddenly all this emotion swelled up in me as we were playing. And I can remember this feeling of, my God, I didn't even know they were buried for so long. And
Mhm.
as we were actually playing it in this rehearsal room, I remember the emotion just swelling up, and I was, wow. And I'm then looking at Rick and looking at the Moog, and this moment of explosion emotional. Okay, so you ask some questions because please.
Okay. So let me tell you what I think connects me to you. Okay.
Okay.
So um, it's very simple. As you said, like the first things you hear as a child that kind of speak to you, they stay with you forever. And for me, like the first record that I bought was Crisis, the Mike Oldfield record. and that, like your name on the back cover, like that, from that moment you were sort of like present in my life,
Oh,
right? And so it's as simple as that, you know. There's just this association you're making with names, the liner notes, the way it used to be with records, you know. It's very different these days,
yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, there's no records. Well,
Exactly, exactly.
I mean,
And
there are actually they're resurging, but it's
yeah. So, but and I was 10, you know, I was 10 years old when that happened. So what is so fascinating now for me talking to you and a lot of other people and like colleagues, and, you know, I play with quite a few musicians who are like 10 years older than you, like Tony Levin. I'm in a band with Tony Levin.
Oh
He's
wow, awesome.
77, right? So, it's sort of wonderful to see how these individual careers, the biographies of us as musicians are sort of intertwined and
Oh yeah.
interconnected.
Oh,
And
it's such a small business, you know. When you get, I mean, I don't say to a level, but you know, when you get noticed, there's a. It really is. It's like, you know, Mick Ralph's a dear friend of mine. He produced one of our albums, Midnight Flyer. You know, his saying was, "See you in the charts." but
yes,
but but the real reality at those times, because there was no email, there was no cell phones, and sometimes you didn't get to say, "Oh, what's your phone number?" It was more like, "I'll see you at the next airport or the next," you know. I mean, with Mike Oldfield, actually, we met on when I was doing the Midnight Flower AC/DC tour in America. We became good friends. So I, the next time I saw him was at Roskilde in is it Sweden? The big
it's
thing.
Denmark, I think.
Denmark. Thank you,
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you for, yeah, Denmark. And you know, I saw him there, and then, you know, then the next time I saw him, I'd met, and but really, because there was no real way of getting hold of apart through your label. You know,
yeah,
we didn't really. I mean, we should have just swapped numbers, but we didn't,
yeah.
and it wasn't. You know, anyway. So, sorry, I'll calm down. Um, so, so I met Jeremy, his personal assistant, at Roskilde, and uh, and if I hadn't met Jeremy, because 6 months later, Swan Song, I was a Swan Song artist, closed down. So I was in London in a music store, guitar store, and there's Jeremy. And Mike's been trying to get hold of you. Swan Song's closed down. Call him tomorrow, you know. And if I hadn't met Jeremy, he wouldn't have recognized me, you know. So it was just, you know, this serendipity that happens,
It's
you know,
incredible.
when we're all circling around the same thing, music, and, you know, the industry as such. So it's not surprising, but it's like, you know, we sort of would, we're gravitated, the right word, to the same stores, you know, whether it's so, but it just the coincidence, you know, is just
Yeah.
amazing.
See, it's even true for me. Like any meaningful musical connection I have with people was not really made in musical context, was made in some
Okay.
sort of private context, like
Yeah.
meeting on a train, or uh, meeting at a dinner party or something like that. But never introducing each other as musicians in the first place.
No.
Just as
Yeah. Well,
people,
it's
you
just
know?
if, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it is. It's. Well, I think the universe has a way of, you know, connecting like-minded spirits. I mean, there is a saying in which I really love, is what you appreciate appreciates.
Mhm, mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about money, if you don't look after, if you don't appreciate your money, it goes away. You know, that's the capitalist view. But with, you know, with energy, you know, what you put out, it attracts more of it.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the things that it is in your favor, you
Mhm.
know. But these, you know, because I mean, coincidence is one way of looking at it. It could also be just a, you know, where energies and, you know, meet. You know, I have a dual. I'm a very spiritualistic person, spirit. But also, I'm a Taurus, so I have my earth grounded part of me. So I see life as a double-sided coin. You know, the earthly side and the spiritual side. And they're all the same thing, but
Yes.
it's like, you know, flip side of the same thing. And now I've come to think it's just all the same. Everything's there.
But you know what? I think, you know, as musicians, we have sort of like an easy time seeing the world like that. You know, like
Yeah.
dual, or the non-dual, actually, what it is, right?
Yeah. Well, we're always in our, you know, in another plane of thought. You
Yes.
know, I mean, one of my favorite cartoons is a little boy and his mum talking, and the little boy is saying, "Mum, when I grow up, I'm going to be a musician." And she says, "Well, son, you'll have to make a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Or
Yes.
grow up or be
Yes.
or be a mission, because you can't. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, some do better than others, but you know, but we are usually catastrophically bad at business when you're
But you
because
know,
all we
it's,
want to do is play.
you could say it's tragic, but I don't think it's tragic at all, because like the way that I see it nowadays is that as musicians, or anybody who's doing any sort of art, for lack of a better word, right? Like we're actually creators. So like we have the role of the gods somehow in this world.
Well, yeah, I
So
mean,
creating materials, you know, creating materials for others to work with. And I think that's fine.
it's very true. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I don't. I think it's more being energy gifting, you know, from the universe of God, rather than being a god. I mean, I mean, you
Yeah,
know,
but you know what I mean. That's why I
no,
did the
no, of course, yeah. I just wanted to clarify. I don't think I'm a god at all. I
no,
think
no.
you know, I mean, and I'm sure you don't think you are. It was a term of, you know, but I term of endearment. But yeah, no, I agree though. I mean, I used to think, you know, well, just by that early first divine intervention, you know, our moment when I felt there was something I was getting, I was receiving rather than, and you know, but you know, any inspiration comes from, you know, 95 perspiration, 95% perspiration, and because I think you have to get there, and some songs, and when you get to a point, then it's easier because you rule out all the, you start on something, and what you would have furthered on, you see, oh no, you have a better filter. George Harrison, one of my favorite interviews, says, you know, the interviewer was asking him, what's it like to be, you know, working with two prolific writers? You know, how do you, he says, well, John and Paul had their wrote their worst 500 songs before I met them.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know, it's a craft, and
it
I'm
is.
still working on it. But you know, I've got a few things I'm proud of, um, you know, over time.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So um
you know, I would love to do a follow up sometime so we can fill in the missing gaps, because I really enjoyed talking to you, sharing.
me too. Like, may I ask you a couple interesting, you know, like I've been ever since I've become an Oldfield fan, I've been sort of like following his whole story, because for
Mm-hmm.
me that is sort of like the big picture is very important to me. I'm not just looking at one song or one record.
Sure, sure. Oh,
And
he's terrific. Yeah.
it's just that I just, I mean, I'm just gonna, so the way that his guitar playing changed after having worked with you, for me,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like he's you know, he's always been changing his styles and his sounds and everything, right? But there's like this particular thing he does on the follow-up to Crisis on Discovery,
Ooh.
where I can't, I really, I'm honestly thinking, I mean, there's, he's got to have been inspired by you somehow. And
Well, you know, well, you know, I mean, I'm very honoured for you to say that. But he did say to me, I'm his favourite guitar player at the time. You know, even when we fell out, because we fell out of petty things.
Yeah.
And I didn't really, because I'd just been in three bands where we were equal partners, and suddenly, and I was so close with Mike as a friend, I didn't really understand the boundaries. It was all about jealousy over women on the road. I mean, to be honest, it really was mainly about that. And then it's just, you know, I mean, we had a food fight, you know, after one. I mean, that's how. But then he invites me skiing. You know, I was always, I felt like the black sheep of the family. You know, I'd sort of. I mean, he did the next tour after Crisis tour without me. And
Yeah.
I mean, Jeremy was calling me up and saying, how many days do you think we should play, you know, daily off? He was really, you know, Mike and I were really close. We used to hang out. Um, so it was very, and then a dear friend of mine, Joel Bogan, who used to play with Toya,
Well, yeah.
he, Mike, without me knowing, at the same time asking me, you know, how many dates, you know, before we have a day off and stuff, you know, through Jeremy. He's at the same time didn't pay for his flights, but he invited him out to Switzerland to audition, didn't get the gig. And then he went on tour without any second guitarist. So I had the backward what do you call it, backhanded compliment of he couldn't replace me, or he didn't, you know. So, but you know, it's interesting because I noticed. I mean, I did rock up Crisis and the track because I put these accents in, and the little, you know, that sort of stuff. You know, I mean, I came up with those. He left me in the studio for about 40 minutes. You know, come up with something, and he had that's the trust we had.
Yes.
And I've got to tell you, the first time he invited me after I met Jeremy, I went to see him the next day, and we were sitting there, and I was thinking, oh God, you know, how was I playing when he met me? Because he came to see us at the AC/DC. He was watching me on the side of the stage every night. Every time I looked, his eyes were on me, like, so I knew that he liked my playing without any doubt. And so when I came along, so he said, "Oh, should we play the like main theme of Tubular Bells?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And this is, I would never say this to someone I didn't feel safe with, but it was a term he understood, right? I said, "Well, do you want me to play it how you play it, or with feeling?"
Yeah.
Now, no, if we, but it was a safe thing to do because he understood exactly what I meant.
Yes.
He knew I wasn't I wasn't being arrogant or, you know, putting him down. The word that should have been is articulation,
Yes. Yeah.
right? But I didn't. That wasn't rock and roll talk. You didn't know, you just talk about with feel, you know, with feel means your way, you know. So
Yes.
luckily he said, "Oh yeah, with feeling," you know. So now I could have easily had the marching orders if we weren't friends, and I would, but I wouldn't have said it like that if I didn't know that he would take it
Yeah.
without, you know. So you know, and we had so many great times when we did Shadow on the Wall solo. We were down the pub, you know, and pretty tanked up when we came back, you know, we knew what we figured out quickly what it was going to do. It's a very simple harmony part. It's not,
Yeah.
you know, but the extra, you know, energy came from many ales. That was the only time, though. You know, everything else was done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
You know, I was always wondering about that record Crisis, how you guys arranged the guitars on the record, and like because there's some extremely wonderful like three-part harmonies there, and obviously for me as a listener, it's difficult to tell who played what, right?
right. Well, the actual Crisis when it gets into the rock
Yes.
thing, I came up with the harmonies for the. I've got three guitars doing that,
Yeah.
and so that was I did. That was one of the things I did on my own in the studio when he left me for 40 minutes,
Yes.
and I put the accents on. But there's the little bluesy thing. I think he showed me the, and I think he helped. I'm pretty sure. I think he basically showed me, and then I may have added something there, but I think that was main. I mean, it definitely was his thing, because I remember, and I think I had to work out the harmony for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to but the funny thing about that album, apart from the Shadow on the Wall, we both had boogies, right, for that sound. I had this little miniature practice amp. It was literally that big, that big in a square. If you're getting, yeah, I mean, about sort of 7 inches tall by 7 by 7, right? And I brought it along, and he said, "Let's use that." So the mic was, it knocked the amp over a few times because the mic was bigger than the amp. But it's got that. That's got that. That's what I used on nearly all the album. I mean, sometimes less is more. Well, the good thing about it though, it had a good tone, and this guitar is my baby that I've used. Actually, Peter Grant bought me this guitar, and I used it on my work. You can see it was very
Yeah,
good condition.
that's the one you played on the Crisis tour as well.
Yeah, yeah. And look, whenever someone says guitarists never use their tone, I don't know if you can see, but if you, I get it close as possible. Can you see the wear? It's actually got a groove with a little finger.
Yeah, I can see it. Wow.
Yeah, but it's actually got. You can actually look. It's dent. It's like a valley.
Valley of the Tone.
Yeah. So, um, yeah. So that this guitar, I mean, it's just, and I had JD. I don't know if you know of JD. Is a famous. He made this because it was original P90, but he molded the same shape, but it's a humbucker, and that's what gives it its extra edge, and it doesn't buzz. I've got a '63 original one with the original P90 that I got from Norm Rare Guitars, who I turned when I came to LA. I found out he's my cousin-in-law. So I went to the store and I said, hey, Norm, I'm your cousin. And I saw his eyes going, oh God, this will cost me. And I was saying, I'm looking for a second for this. And he went to the back and he went, this is, it was mint condition, got it. And he said, I was going to bring this home for my collection. And he gladly gave it to me for a song.
Wow.
Meaning a very, very amazing, deal. Lovely guy. He's just, recovered from some illness that I've been through. And he's, doing well. So bless him. Anyway, so that was funny. Sorry, but quick one.
So just some other question, like about when did you get to Los Angeles? When did you move to Los Angeles? And
I moved. I had lung cancer, brain mets in London, in England, and through miracle, I've met Paul Reed Smith the year before, and we just hit it off. And he said, Ant, after 3 days, we were at a bar, and he said, Ant, I'm going to build you the guitar of your dreams. I said, we'll make it like this one. and then we didn't speak for 3 or 4 months, and I call him and we'd carry on the same conversation, as if there was something very. I showed him some stuff from Paul Kossoff stuff, and he was a big Free fan, so that's where we connected musically. And yes, and he's anyway, so when I got ill, I called him up. Paul, I'm ill. And he said, okay, make a book. And I figured out that America chance for lung cancer survival was 45%. England at the time was 25%. And my doctor I met was basically said that it wasn't curable, you know. So I thought, yeah, right. So like that night, I called Paul randomly. I hadn't spoken to him for a bit. And immediately he said, yeah, book a flight to, you know, Baltimore and keep it, you know, keep renewing it. And then put her phone down. I get Michael Hibbler, who at the time was the director, no, the family patient coordinator for Sydney Kimmel, the cancer centre for Johns Hopkins, which is, in my view, the best cancer hospital in the world. So, I'm on the phone with this Michael Hibbler, and first of all, he, you know, gives me assessment. You know, how old are you? How healthy? Oh, well, you know, apart from this, you know, I'm pretty good. So he said, okay, you're a good candidate. I know exactly who I'm going to call. You know, it turned out to be John Weingart, neurosurgeon, and Stephen Yang, my lung surgeon. And he said, but they're a bit precious. I'll tell them you're an international rock star. And I'm going, you know, wait a minute. No, 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 you know, sorry. They're a bit precious. So, and he said, how did he go, God? But he retracted himself by saying, hang on a minute, you're a friend of Paul's and you're a guitar player. You know, oh my God. Yeah. And it was like an Archie Fufkin moment in Spinal Tap. Have you ever seen that? We go, kick my ass. It was slightly different circumstances, but it was a similar, you
Yeah.
know. And so the more I sort of, you know, because I'm humble, I mean, there are many household names that, you know, I'm way down the list on, you know, what I consider the greats. But I was very, you know, I do have a pretty good resume. So, but I was humble, and then the more I did that, you know, oh, you know, so you're an international rock star, and the more, you know, so that just broke the ice, and it was so, you know, made it, beautiful connection.
Yeah.
And then when I finally got there, you know, I was not in a good state. And he brought a wheelchair, and he said after later, he said, this guy's not going to make it. So, you know, I'm blessed by Paul's, you know, I had no idea he does pro celebrity golf tournaments with the cancer center. That's how I had no idea. It's just he was my influential friend in America. So, you know, and now Johns Hopkins, two of my thoracic surgeons, Stephen Yang and Michael Hibbler, they both call me the miracle of medicine. So you know, I'm still here. I think I'm here for a reason. So, you know, so that's how I got to America.
When was this? Which year?
2002.
2002. And that's sort of like when you stop touring, then obviously.
Yeah, I was supposed to be going to Jakarta with Rick, and we were there on the same day, but he different terminals. I was the international terminal, and you know, but I didn't get to see him. But yeah, and Rick, you know, when I first said, look, Rick, because you know, I used to call him Uncle Dick. he used to like, he used to, you know, come and tell Uncle Dick. So I said, Uncle Dick, you know, I've got a problem. And I said, you know, I've got a serious problem. And he was in shock like I was, you know, I was like, oh, you know. So anyway, he went to Jim Marshall, um, and also he referred me to Roy Castle's Liverpool Cancer Trust. Um, but then by another miracle, by Paul Reed Smith, who I only met like a year or so before, and he actually brought he actually was 2 years before, because the when was it? It was Frankfurt Messe, which it was shortly before the cancer came. Um, about a year later, maybe. He built, but the guitar he built me for my dreams was, I've got it. It's an absolutely stunning PRS that I measured, you know, where he measured my neck, because he showed me a couple, and I said, a little bit thin. He said, Ant, that's a millimeter thin. I said, well, yeah, I can tell.
Yes.
And so it was a custom made by Joe Knaggs, who was then his private stock luthier. And it was the most beautiful guitar. I've got it. I mean, if we've got, I mean, I could get it out of the case, but I know we're on time limit. Um,
No, we don't have a time limit, but I need to show you something.
oh, yeah, please.
So, so this instrument,
Yeah.
this is my design, and I did it with a luthier called Ed Reynolds, who also worked for Paul Reed Smith at the time.
Okay, cool. Looks
And,
lovely.
so Ed is in Austin, Texas, and in 2006, because I used to play Chapman stick, so I played
Okay.
touch style with two hands, right?
Ah, okay.
And I had sort of like, I believe at that point, I believed I had decoded the technique, and I wanted to build an instrument for the technique rather than coming up with a technique for an invention like the Chapman stick, right?
Right.
I went to this guy at Reynolds and I said, I want you to build me a traditional guitar instrument that does what I need. And
Okay.
that's how I got into making and
Well,
designing
show
guitars.
me, show me what you do with it.
I don't have an amp here, so I can't
It
really.
doesn't matter.
It's
Just acoustic. Give me
just
like. Oh, you play it like a stick? Yeah.
play like stick,
Wow.
and I integrate the two hands into one line.
Yeah.
I don't hammer on and pull off like you would on a guitar. Like I tap each individual note.
Yeah, just so it's very low action and but very resonant.
Low action, and it's tuned in fifths, which is sort of like which I think it has to be tuned in fifth for this style to
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it was more like a violin then in tuning.
more like a violin, exactly. And because we have 8 fingers and we cover the
Yeah.
fifth on a string, like with 8 half steps, and it really like makes total sense with
And is it strung from low to
yeah,
high?
yeah. And
Yeah.
actually
So it's not
this is like a low B flat. This is
right. Okay.
lower
So
than a 5 string bass, and you go up to
yeah.
high
How
D.
many how many strings do you have on it?
It's 8 strings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got your 8 fingers, right? And now Django Reinhardt would have a field day with that.
Yeah. But he would have played with only one finger.
Yeah, two. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but his style. In fact, it was so economic.
Uh-huh.
He didn't have all he had to think about was 2 fingers. Like
It's incredible. Yeah.
I mean that's I grew up loving that as well. It's just phenomenal. And then Tony Iommi, you know, he invented those chords because they couldn't do the other ones. And I mean, you know, um, innovation comes from necessity.
Yes.
It's every time, and brilliant things come when you're limited, and you figure out. Because I'm not a big fan of lush jazz chords. I mean, I appreciate them, but when I mean, I love Stevie Wonder because he simplified.
Yeah.
The you are the sunshine of my love. That could be a big jazz chord. When they but he makes it triangular. He'll just put like a D.
Yeah. Like yes.
It just does that, but the bass determines the chord.
Exactly.
You go, oh man,
Yeah,
sorry, I do on piano usually, but you know what I mean. But instead of that, I'll do it in the then it goes. Oh, so um, okay, so it goes. Flat. Sorry. And that's just it's like a yes chord with more or less the other way around. It's what the prog rock took away those flowery notes out of jazz changes a lot of
yes,
the time.
exactly. exactly.
You know, so one of the techniques. You know, so yeah, I really, it's more understandable when you've got less notes.
Hey, so how, because I'm just so curious about
No, John, yeah.
how did you learn the Oldfield stuff? Did he show you, or did you have to do it by ear, or
um, well, do you mean for the tour or
for the
for
tour?
the?
Yeah, for the
Oh
tour.
no, well, we just got together for 3 weeks, um, with him, and we went through like I mean, it was all by ear. I didn't know. I mean, actually, we were so close, and I feel really guilty. But he asked me, "Should we get David Bedford to do the whole score?" I went, "Nah." Just like that, and I probably got, lost him like 50 grand commission, and I really apologize. The thing is, one, it would intimidate me because I grew up playing by retention,
Yes.
and the other thing is, I mean, if we had one, we wouldn't use it after the first week or so. You know what I mean? It'll become so so when we rehearsed, it was actually Phil Spalding and myself. We got the whole thing in about a week and a half. It was 2 hour, it's like 200 little excerpts. And the funny thing is, when we got to certain parts, the guitar parts, that okay, did it that weird, he looks at me and says, "You don't want to play that, do you?" Nah. So it was so funny, nice, but that was the understanding and friendship we had. It was safe for me to say, "No, not really."
Yes.
I mean, I felt so, because I really respected his composition. I mean, when I first met him in it was at the Forum, actually, in out here in LA at the end, during the ACDC tour. Um, uh, I had no what motivation or reason to want to play with him, but I respected him because he used my favorite guitarist at the time, Mick Taylor, when he did the Albert Hall. Right. So, and I grew up listening to Tubular Bells, like everyone else did. So it wasn't. I mean, I never thought. And all I'd really heard of him over the years, because I missed a lot of his music, but the main things I heard was the Blue Peter theme, and all, and it's folky, clog dancey, which he was, very good at, but it wasn't, in my roster of being a rock blues guitar player. But I knew he was from a blues background as well as, and I really liked him, and he first thing he said to me when we met was, "Oh, I got a guitar like that," because he was using an SG. This is a Les Paul SG, but I wasn't gonna. I just, he was trying to connect very well, and then, as I say, he was watching me a bit like a hawk on the stage, of my side of the stage, every night at the Forum. So I knew there was a. So,
Hey,
what was the question?
I want to tell you something. So one of my teachers and friends is Robert Fripp. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
And I spoke with Robert once about Mike, about Oldfield. And Robert said to me, and this is still like rings in my ears, he said that Mike was a very, very nice man, and that I shouldn't believe what others are saying.
Oh yeah. Well, he's a very nice guy, but he's also had, he's had a lot of trauma.
Mm.
So when he gets frustrated, it goes inside, and I actually got worried about him, because I saw him. He was getting annoyed about something. We're on a train, and I'm sitting opposite him, and he's actually turning red.
Mhm.
And he's boiling up, but he's not going to explode. It'll all go internal. And
Ah,
I said, Mike, I'm really concerned about you're going to have a heart attack.
mm,
And he was very suppressed. And Jeremy, his personal assistant, was the
yeah.
opposite.
Mhm.
So he was. Mike's conduit to the outside world, so to speak.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, he's a very traditional, but also open for lots of fun. But yeah, but I really dearly, because we sort of fell out over silly things.
Yeah.
And and Wayne Smith, who's a dear friend of mine, is friends with Mike and Rick.
Mhm.
And so with Rick also through, you know, circumstances, we had differences and, fell out.
Mhm.
Rick apparently wanted to, at least invite me to his show just before COVID. He was doing in LA. Didn't happen, so
Mhm.
we haven't really spoken. But that's another issue. I don't really want to go into that, but it's there are some issues which I I'm not happy with that happened, but
Mhm.
that's another thing. And but I still bless Rick for the time I had with him, the good times, because we were very close as well.
Yeah.
Um, so I both of Mike, I mean, I love them both, and I want to put it out that you know the the it's I'm a romantic. I forget any of the bad endings. I'm also the energy you get when, and the recognition I got through being able to work. Because I'm honored and actually to make that you've recognized that he added a bit of my essence in his playing. He needed it. He was a bit. I mean, he had a more classical, his vibrato, violin vibrato. It was like, um, but
I
I don't.
also,
So,
the energy of that Crisis live band, for me, that's still sort of like the reference. So
well, I
if
don't.
if if
Yeah,
I if I ever had a band with more than three people in it, that's the kind of power I want,
it
you know.
was amazing time. We really had great shows, and what the thing that I feel proud of, right? This is my one contribution.
Mhm.
When we first started, the first show we did, all the front two rows were all Afghan jackets and John Lennon glasses and peace signs, right? After the week, they were all leather jackets and doing the rock thing. And we got a review in this magazine, French magazine. I've got it somewhere, and they called us Les Rolling Oldfields. So and I mean, I really was the only. I just toured with AC/DC for 2 years, with our band Midnight Flyer, So I brought that into, but the energy, and Simon Phillips was amazing, and Pierre Moulin, both they did two drum kits. Pierre was also doing percussion,
Right.
but there was one track called Mount Tidy.
Yes.
That's how you spell it, and that was both of them. They're going in and they're going black, blank, 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 boom. And although it's like orchestral power going on behind me,
Yes.
oh, and yeah, we had Westlake monitors that were sawn in half, like because they're normally a studio monitor, and Mike had them customized so there were stage monitors. We had our own little mixers, stuff. I mean, it was like I went from heavy blues rock with AC/DC. Our band was pretty. We were getting great reviews and everything. Then, of course, Swan Song collapsed and Deal collapsed, and I went from there to this like orchestral prog. I refer it to being sucked into the prog world.
Yes. Yes. Hey, so, and is Jeremy Parker still around?
Well, Mike let him go some time ago.
Yeah, but does he still
I
work?
don't know. I don't know. I mean, I
Okay.
lost touch with them. That whole family.
Mhm.
He was like glued to Mike.
Mhm.
Because Mike sort of needed it, but then Mike found out that. I mean, he screwed me a few times, unfortunately,
Mhm.
by blaming me for something in front of Mike that wasn't me.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, and I'm again,
Yeah.
so what?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I was part of the equation anyway. You know, one thing is, anything that's gone wrong in my life, I've realised I'm the common denominator. Not I'm the common denominator. Accountability doesn't matter. It does matter. I mean, that's
You know,
all it's about.
that is an extremely wise statement you just made.
I learned it from a friend who suddenly came out with it. I thought, yes, that's the most humility and accountability fact that you can take in. You know, learn something new.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Hey, I have an idea. How would you feel about we talk a second time?
100%. I'd love to, because there's so much to talk about, and
Yes,
we've only, well, I think we've only scraped about, a quarter of what could
yes.
be.
Yeah, and
Uh,
yeah, probably less than a quarter.
yeah, and I'm really interested in hearing about you, because you've had a prolific connections with people I grew up with, like hearing, and Robert Fripp. I was at Hyde Park, the Stones concert.
Oh, you were there.
Yeah, I was there, but unfortunately, my mum and I was like 14 or 13, 12 even, and so my mum took us, and then we didn't see the band. We were just over there's like, it's a basin, right, at Hyde Park, and we were just on the rim, so I could hear them, but I heard King Crimson, 21st century Schizo Man stuff. And then when the Stones came on, all the Hells Angels ran forward behind us, and my mum got afraid. So my brother and his friend ran off and saw the Stones, and my mum took us home because she was
Yeah.
our safety. I mean, I know, but we were there.
Oh, that's amazing. Like, yeah. Wow. Let's do this again, and let's do it soon.
Yes, definitely. Well, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Marcus. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share some of my story. And I'm writing a book right now, so that's another one of the things. And it's going to be about my rock and roll roller coaster ride,
Huh?
in which incorporates my career, obviously, because it has been like that, up and down, amazing ups, and then, but then I lost my daughter through a hospital error, so I know about grief because I've been living with it for the last, well, since 1997. And then 5 years later, I contracted lung cancer with brain mets, which spiritually, lung cancer is associated with grief.
Uh,
So I've got some, and so so I'm a against the all odds. My oncologist told me I had 10% of living a year back in 2002, and I, beneath my tears, I said I'm the 1% who's going to be going on for another 50 years, and here I am still.
so if you don't mind talking about all those things before your book is released, I would happily talk with you about that.
Well, I mean, it's going to be much more in detail, but of course, I can share
Yeah,
some, moments of it. Yeah,
because
yeah, because
I'm sure there's something to learn from
well,
somebody
well,
who has that kind of.
well, my purpose is to go out. Once I've got a book written, I'm going to go out and speak, get
Yeah,
on the circuit. You need some product to
yeah,
do that on the circuit. So, and I'm I plan to start off with a bit of guitar, shred a little bit, and play some music, and then introduce myself, and then go into my life.
yes,
With all the three different aspects, to try in the hope to uh, help people who are in that situation. That I was lucky, because when I faced my first time of thinking I may die, I'd just been given some steroids from the doctor when we discovered I had the in England, and I'm sparring away, going, I'm going to be okay, because I knew I had lots big surgery to be done. I had a CEO talk to my whole body, addressing every cell, saying we've got to meet whatever happens halfway, right? And and so I'm sparring away, I'm going to be all right. And suddenly this little voice apparently from this side, or are you? Scary. and 3 times, and I turned round, and as I turned round, I envisaged this Looney Tunes cartoon with these little munchkins eating my brain away, and it was so funny, and I said, well, if I'm totally screwed and there's nothing I can do, I bared my chest and said, bring it on, I'm ready. I had no fear, just go, because I'd lost my daughter 5 years before, and I said, you know, I'll be with her in the afterlife or in the nothing life, but wherever it is, I'll be with her.
Yes.
And that took away any fear, because I needed to have 100% confidence, or that I was gonna be able to do this, because a little bit of negativity will go into your cortisol.
Yes.
Um, it will produce cortisol, and that I did not need any sense of fear, because that's one of the main things that kills you. If you've got fear, we all have fear, but controlling it,
Yes.
and it subsided, and it was overwritten by my absolute 100% resolute, no fear. I'll embrace whatever happens, but my resolve to live was back to 100% again. If that makes sense.
And I'm glad you're here, and
Me
I,
too.
I kind of regret that I haven't contacted you earlier, but
Wow.
now
Come on. Come on. What have you been doing?
but
You-
I was in Los Angeles just a couple of months ago.
really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow. I love.
yeah, we
Well, are
played
you,
6 shows at the Baked Potato.
oh, I know. Yeah. Oh, I'd have been there, but like a shot, man.
Mhm.
Oh, well, if you ever come back, you got to look me up, and we'll hang out.
Yeah, we will, and we'll talk before that though. Here,
Yes, of course. Yeah, we'll do it next week if you want, or just let me know.
yes, I'll hang up now, and send you a message, and we'll talk
Okay.
next week. Okay.
All right. Well,
Okay.
so send me the link where I can see this. To
Yes,
see what.
this won't be out for another 2 weeks or so.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Well,
Okay.
it's a pleasure, and meeting you, and sharing time with you, and I'm so blessed that things that you've said, I feel very humbleized, humble.
Humbleized. Thank you so
I'm
much.
okay. Have a great
Okay.
one, man.
Talk to you
Thank you.
soon. Yeah. Thank
Very
you. Bye bye for now.
goodbye to you. A big
Okay,
kiss.
Bye.